Hello, everyone.
How's it going, everybody?
Thanks for joining us. My name is JJ Harrison, and I work with a company called Sketchboard Pro. And today we have a special guest, Ryan Simmons, whose credits include. Why don't you give us some of your background real quick, Ryan?
Okay. I started working off at Turner Feature Animation on the movie Cats Don't Dance. Then I went to Warner Brothers Animation, and I worked on The Quest for Camelot and The Iron Giant. Then after that, I worked at DreamWorks Animation on The Road to El Dorado and Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. And that was all 2D hand-drawn stuff. Paper, pencil, Lightbox, old school.
Awesome. Well, today let's start things off with a cartoon, because you're supposed to watch cartoons in the morning and it's still the AM where we are. So for your enjoyment, everyone, here is the cartoon we'll be talking about during this panel. And yeah, we'll see you in a minute. Woo! All right, and we're back. So yeah, that was the cartoon that we put together. So Ryan and I work at a studio called Braintree House, and Sketchboard Pro is one of our brands. And we thought we're working on this video game for our studio. It's like our main thing. You might have seen that a lot of those characters come right out of our video game, and we've been in development on that for a couple years now, in tandem with our development of the Sketchboard Pro. And as we just thought it would be fun to take some of the stuff we've done, because Ryan has animated so much for our video game. And we already started introducing some of our characters from the game into branding for Sketchboard Pro. As you can see on the background of this video, some of those characters showed up in the packaging for Sketchboard Pro, and it was just kind of like, let's put these somewhere because they're fun. You know, we made some stickers and stuff, and we put them on the packaging, and then people started asking about them, and so we're like, okay, cool, let's integrate them more with the Sketchboard Pro for fun. So that's pretty much what we were going for with this cartoon. And of course, our whole game, I think the look and feel of our game is inspired by old Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera style of animation. And so that, it was really fun to take that and make a cartoon out of it for Sketchboard. And I'm glad to say that it's probably the first of many to come, which makes me happy. If we could figure out a way to just make cartoons and have that be the business for a while, I'd be pretty thrilled with that. But yeah, Ryan, why don't you tell us your take on it? Because I think when I said to the team, like, hey, let's make some cartoons for Sketchboard, I just kind of threw it out as a challenge, and I said, hey, what can we do? Let's show some of our characters maybe using the Sketchboard. And I think you, like, overnight came back almost. It seemed like it was the next day you came back with this entire idea for the Sketchboard factory, basically.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about those old cartoons where it shows how things are made, like Disney Silly Symphonies, like how Easter eggs are made, and it's completely unorthodox, and it's not it's not accurate at all. And so it's got just weird things happening that you wouldn't expect to form the final product. And so I thought that'd be really fun to do. So I just thought of, first of all, okay, what is the product? It's this board. What would these, creatures in the forest, how would they even create that? And like, well, what if they just mine little cubes and then they just smash it? What's a good way to smash something? And at first I thought we could have a big character just kind of sit on it and flatten it. And I thought, well, I might need more force. So I came up with the log. And so just different ways, like weird ways to have normal things happen was kind of the idea behind it. And of course, the end, we see that they get shipped by just parachutes. So, if anybody's sketchboard comes late, it's not our fault. It's just the winds weren't blowing that day or whatever,
I'm
But
gonna go ahead and load up some of that while you're talking. Just one of the first, let it
yeah.
play. So
So this is this does have a lot
what?
of finished animation in this one.
Yeah, this is one of the earlier animatics that kind of stitched together the entire
Yeah.
presentation. So it's got a mix of some finished stuff and uh, some really rough stuff.
Yeah. And because we are pulling characters from the game, a lot of stuff's already been animated. So that little squirrel and his flying cycle with his tail, the dog running, this guy running, were done. And so I thought, oh, let's see if we can just incorporate those. And that woodpecker's a new character we created for this. But yeah, the animatic is basically a moving storyboard. And the idea for this is to think about what the viewer is seeing, like what the camera is seeing, how close in are we, or what angle are we at, and then, oh, this is old version, and then where the camera moves, and figure out the timing. And the nice thing about an animatic is that it's you can show the edits from scene to scene. You can get an idea of how quick or slow a shot is happening. It's also easier to edit stuff on the fly.
hmm
Also, we want to work rough. I know this version has, like, this is rough here. The reason you want to work rough is because you don't want to spend a lot of time on a beautiful drawing and then be told later, yeah, that totally doesn't work. We're gonna have to scrap that. And you're like, oh, can't we figure out a way to keep that in because it just looks so good? That's not the point at this phase, in the animatic phase. It's, let's just get the idea out there. Let's figure out if it's working and how we can improve it, basically. So in this one, it's kind of a rough animation at the same time. You'll see background wise, some shots don't have anything. Like this really doesn't have a background. In this phase, I only included what is necessary to tell the story.
hmm
So if you go to the next shot, it's even more sparse. Like this is like a shipping department. I just put a sign in there to say he's going to be heading in this direction. And then JJ, who later created the backgrounds, he had some challenges because I didn't give him anything at that point. The part where you sketch out the backgrounds is called layout. You're laying everything out. Now, if you
hmm
pause right here on this scene, so this right here, we've got the stump, and you can't really see it well, but the big pig is leaning against a tree. And so I felt, okay, these things are essential. I'm going to put them in this animatic stage. So whatever else goes on in the background isn't really important, but the tree and the log, the stump, they have to be painted at the same dimensions and they can't really change in order for the animation to work on top of it.
Oops. Let's
So
pause
there
it
you can
there.
see, yeah. So there you can see where things line up. Okay, so, and then JJ was able to go in and embellish and create all this other foliage and forest. But for the animatic phase, it was, let's just get the story down. This guy sneezes, blows out the opening in the sketchboard. Well, what causes him to sneeze? What's an unorthodox way to cause him to sneeze? Could somebody tickle him with a feather? Yeah. What about if, Pepper comes down and makes him sneeze? That'd be more fun. So yeah, what are your thoughts, JJ? Anything else you want to talk about in this phase?
No, yeah, I mean, I can talk about working around your roughs, and then as you go to finish, um, working. I think earlier on that you didn't have a prop um, design for the can of pepper, and so I had to take that on and, and draw that up for you, but that wasn't too challenging.
No.
Um, we were basically going for like kind of a turn of the century look. Like I said, these characters come from a game we're developing that it roughly takes place at the end of the Victorian era. That's kind of the sensibility we use for our design of our characters, the things they wear, and uh, you know, obviously
Mhm.
we don't stick to that completely because later on in the show we've got pizzas in pizza boxes, and that is a gag about if you've ever ordered if you have a Sketchboard Pro, uh, who we made this cartoon for, it comes in a box that looks a lot like a pizza box. And early on, when we were prototyping packaging, we just nicknamed it the pizza box. And I think that obviously that made its way into here as a joke, that we're assembling boxes by eating the pizzas and then reusing the boxes. Which is not what happens in real life. We
We
do
have
use
we have
we
we have a whole process where we have to
yeah,
suck out the grease from the cardboard box. It's
right.
a pain.
Challenging. We do use recycled materials, but yeah, we're not ordering them from Domino's. Uh, I should mention here on this scene too, the badger here, he comes straight out of the game, and you dropped him in because I was like, hey, because I think originally maybe we just had the bear here, and I was like,
Yeah.
let's put the badger in too, because
Mhm.
he's eating. The badger is kind of an ongoing gag throughout our video game. He just shows up in scenes and he's just eating stuff. And in this scene, left over from where Ryan I think just dropped in finished animation from the game. This is a scene where he's eating a bug, like he's sucking out the guts and eating the shell and stuff. Um, and so we kind of keep that joke going, but the we turn that into him eating pizza crusts. If we look at like the final version of that scene, um, he doesn't eat the crusts; he just spits them out, which is true for a lot of us.
There you go. Okay, so I want to go through. If you want to let me share
Take it
my
away.
screen here. Let me do. Um, let me do this. Okay. Okay. So this is the file, and
Let's put
the
you.
the program I'm using is Adobe Animate, and so here, this is just the opening shot here of the badger or the beaver coming out. And so let me just talk about some of the different things going on here. One thing with this phase I did mention is staging, um, figuring out where the camera is, thinking about the action. Like I think in this phase, what happens, he sneezes, and I just have the pig run off like this. And then when I went to clean it up later, when I put the animation here, I realized he was stepping right over his leg. So I kind of had to grab the entire scene and kind of shift it upwards a little bit to give him more room to run. This is a scene that didn't make it. In the cartoon, we have the legs being put on by this character jumping, and they're already in the ground, and he jumps over. This idea was just that he comes in, he slams it down, and then this other character has these the little legs with glue already on there, and he just kind of puts them on one by one. And I showed it. JJ's like, yeah,
Yeah,
let's try that again.
it's a funny scene, but I felt like it slowed down the action
Yeah,
quite a bit, and I thought there must be just a way to pop those on a lot faster.
yeah, exactly. Oh, okay, well, that's nice. So in this scene, actually, yeah, you can see this is the original animation of the badger eating the guts of a bug, and then he pops in the bug, and then the shell, and then he ends up spitting them out, and that. So I had to go in and modify that animation. Okay, so we've talked about the animatic and what that is. Also, I put in music that I had found online that I really liked, and it was good because for scenes like the sneezing, I had the sneeze happen right on a kind of a crescendo in the music. And
Mm.
I knew that we could swap out this music later. Um, and we did find another song that we liked, and I put it in, and I was like, oh, the new song doesn't work at all. The original one works really, really well. So if you have something like that at your disposal when you're creating the animatic, definitely put that in as well so you can work with that. Okay, so when it comes to cleaning things up, let me just, oh, I don't want to do that. What I would do is I would grab one scene at a time and I would start cleaning it up. And because we had established that, yes, this is what's going to happen in this scene, it's going to come down at this point, and this guy's going to zip off with it. Once we knew that's what's going to happen, then I would go in and clean up each individual character here. Okay, so we've got this guy here, this beaver, and just go in and clean him up, put the in-between drawings in there, color it, and basically replace what's in the animatic. It's really efficient this way, and it made it so that for JJ and anybody else who's in on this behind the scenes, there's no big surprises coming. It's not like I'm going to now design a huge character or I'm going to flip and move things around. No, this is what it is, and we're just going to come in and embellish things and make it look, like full animation. So when cleaning things up or animating, it's important to use the 12 principles of animation. Now I found this online, and this is we're going to go through each of these and what they are. And if you use these things in your animation, this will help bring life to your animation. It'll help it look more realistic, more entertaining, just all around amazing. And once you learn these principles, you'll just kind of be able to think, what's wrong with this thing? Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to add anticipation or whatever it is. So let's look at the first one here. The first one is squash and stretch. Now, this is the principle of when things are moving fast, they stretch. When they smack into something, they squash. Okay. Now, obviously, in our cartoon, the obvious example for that is the scene where this little guy comes in right here, and there's, so just to try to zoom in on this, there's our squash, and then back one. Here's our stretch. Okay. Now, as he reaches the top of his jump, he loses speed, so he doesn't have that squash and stretch applied. Then as he gains speed, there's that stretch again, and then squash right there, and then stretch, and he's out. Okay. So there is squash and stretch. The next one is timing and motion. Timing is so important to help things move in a believable manner. So in this shot, we've got this guy comes in. Just going to zoom in here. And we're looking at the timing of this. What happens is he comes in and he slows down, comes to a screech like this, and then you notice he goes back a little bit. Think of it if you're in a car and you stop really quickly, kind of get that jerking motion. That's what happens here. He stops and then he comes back like that, okay? So timing and motion. The next one is anticipation. So this is anytime there is an action beforehand, there's going to be an action that is going to be opposite of that. So for example, in the same shot here, let me just go back a little bit, not that far. Let me just turn the sound off. I thought I had it off. Anyway, this guy, he's waiting here, and his action is he's going to throw this lever down. But anticipation says that he needs to move in the opposite direction first. So let's see, where did we get that? There it is right there. Okay, so there's the first frame. So before he can go down, he's going to go up a little bit like that, and then he's going to come down like that. That is anticipation. So again, back the opposite way and then down the main way, okay? And there's other examples of that in the cartoon as well. Okay, staging, we kind of talked about this. It is, what is the setup of the scene? It's important. I've taught animation in the past at university, and one thing I did notice is that a lot of times the students, without really having paid attention to staging, will just make it so that all the characters are full body, almost like you're watching like a play. And it's like, well, you don't need to do that all the time. You can, for example, in this one, we see the whole thing, and then we purposely zoom in right here. We want to get a close-up and see what's going on with his face. Also, we can read that the canister says pepper on it. Okay, so staging, very important to show the action, make things clear so that the viewer isn't confused at all. The next one is follow through and overlapping action. So that's when we have the main action that's happening, but then within that, we have some parts of the character that arrive and stop and start at a different time than the main character. So again, let's just look at this scene of this guy sneezing, right? So I'm going to zoom in here. And a lot of time these animation principles will overlap, meaning you'll be using multiple at one time. So check out his ear here. When he goes forward like this, his head is pretty much stopped, but you see that the ear is still traveling and still moving. Okay. Also, like I just mentioned, we've got squash and stretch. See how stretched that ear is right there? We can see really over here, this is the actual size, but it's moving fast and it's getting pulled. And so we've got this stretch right here, and then it settles back in right there to its natural shape. But that's secondary. We've got things happening, starting and stopping at a different time. Also, his hair as well is doing its thing and stopping pretty much after he is stopped. Okay. And JJ, you'll let me know if there's any questions or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, we had one, but I think it'll be better to pop back to it after you get through these principles.
Okay. Next principle is straight ahead and pose to pose action. Now this is kind of like more the method of going about animating. So pose to pose action is like we just discussed on that beaver with the lever is, let's grab it. When you're animating, you just want to think of a few key poses. So we've got the static pose here. And then we've got, let me just kind of in the wrong order here. So I would do that one. The next one I would do would be like this one. So that's pose number 2. And then we know he's going to go back to pose number 1. So basically it's just 2 poses. That's pose to pose animation. Okay. So straight ahead animation means I'm just going to start on pose 1 and I'm just going to animate and see where it goes. And you would think, well, that seems kind of a little bit dangerous. Don't know what's going on. But it's only for certain things. So we're going to take a look at this character, his scarf here. When he takes off running, the animation of his body is already done. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this thing react to the up and down of his body motion. And I'm just going to do that frame by frame, going just straight ahead. You can see as it goes off there. And it'll come into the next scene here. Okay, so this right here, this is an example of when you would use straight ahead animation. This thing is reacting, so I need to base it on another animation, an existing animation. So it's going to follow what it does, so really you don't need to do it pose to pose. Okay, the next one is slow in and out. This is very similar to timing and motion, but if you don't have slow in and out, if a character is walking across the screen and then just stops, it looks really weird. They're going to slow down. Also, when like a car pulls out, it doesn't just instantly go. It has to gain momentum. Okay. Let me just see this for 1 second. So in this shot right here, when this little guy goes, we'll just play it. He's gonna pick up speed as he goes across the screen, right? So now he's going faster. You can see it right as he goes off. He kind of zips out quicker right there. So that is an example of slowing out, because he's starting out slow and then he's picking up speed. Okay. Next one is arcs. So when you are moving your characters, what's good is if they are in arcs. Let me just go over here. So we've got our main character Cloudy here, and he's going to go underneath this and he's going to blow up into the parachute. So if you can see, you see how he's moving on an arc right there? An arc is just, like a half circle. And so it's important that things move on arcs because it's more appealing. And in this example here, you can see what you like to do with your rough animation is kind of actually sketch out that arc, and then you can plan your action on top of it. Okay. Now, the next one is exaggeration. And this is a fun one. And I think you've already seen some of it here with this guy sneezing. Okay. So when he sneezes, I'm going to exaggerate. So there's my exaggeration right there. Now, the reason I can get away with this is because he's moving so fast, right? If we play it, you don't really see it. You more feel it. That's where exaggeration works best. We also saw exaggeration in the squash and stretch, but yeah, it's pretty weird looking. If you look at hand-drawn films, if you stop sometimes and pause and look at a frame in between a fast action, you'll see some crazy stuff. It's actually really fun as an animator, just be like, I'm just going to go crazy here and I'm going to see what it looks like. So yeah, again, squash and stretch has exaggeration when the character is moving. And again, if you see here, the character puts this in the pizza box, right? He picks it up. And now we're going to see a couple of principles. He needs to go up, right? And he's going to jump out of the scene. So in order to jump up first, he needs to anticipate. He needs to go down first. So he's going to go down. So this is anticipation. And it's also squash and stretch. This is our squash. And it's also exaggeration because people just don't squash down into that shape naturally. And then he pops out of it. Okay. And the next one we have is secondary action. So we kind of talked about this with the scarf on the character. This is something that is moving, it's influenced by the main action. One scene I like is this one here with the dog. So as this character comes in, we've got stretch. Also, it's coming in on an arc like this, an angle. So we've got, there's our squash and stretch, right? And again, this scarf is being influenced. It's our secondary motion because of the main motion it's attached to. Okay. So other things we have in this scene, we've got the dog's tongue, which is also secondary. It's kind of moving up and down according to the main action of the dog. Okay. And then solid drawing. This is so important because sometimes you'll get a character and you've only got a couple views and you've got to turn it around and you've got to figure it out. Let's see. One thing I like in this scene in particular, let's do pizza box. I'm just going to turn all this off. Is he's running and he's holding, what did I just do? He's holding the Sketchboard Pro, and I have it just at one angle here. But then as he comes around, I draw it in perspective like this. Okay. So solid drawing is important because if the viewer's watching this and all of a sudden this thing just pops or does something strange, it's going to kind of take them out of the moment and go, wait, what was that? Is that thing glitching? What's going on with that? So solid drawing is very important. Okay. And the last one is appeal. Now this usually applies to like character appeal. Make sure that your characters are interesting to look at. Make sure if they're supposed to be cute, they're cute. If you look at the bear right here as he's chewing, I really wanted to make like that pose right there, just kind of cute and a little, I don't know what the word is, just chubby, got his eyes half closed, kind of like, hey man, I'm doing my job, I'm eating these pizzas, but I'm tired of it. Right? So we've got that and we've got mouth moving. Okay, kind of a stretch pose right there as well. Okay. Give your characters appeal. Good example that you'll see in animation books is that, when the cute characters should be cute, like this little guy. The villains are usually they have harsher angles. It just depends on how they're designed. But appeal is important. I once did an animation for a client, and he wanted me to animate a stick figure, and I did my best to have that thing move good and have squash and stretch anticipation. But it was still just the stick character, and it was like, oh, this character has no appeal. It just wasn't very interesting to watch. It didn't get invested much, but those are the 12 principles of animation. Look them up, study them. They're in lots of animation books. As you can see, we used all of these things in this cartoon, and it really helped to bring it to life and to make it appealing and entertaining. Okay. JJ, I'm going to throw that back to you now.
You would.
Follow that.
Cool. I just turned your screen off, so you're good.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about layout and background. As we saw earlier, we were looking at some of these scenes. I was fortunate as the layout and background artist on this cartoon to have had Ryan introduce a lot of layout just in his sketch. And that's something, working with Ryan, sometimes he just does that, and it's awesome because it makes the job a lot easier for me. Usually we have to look at the most important things like these props, or I call them props. I mean, these are things that are animated on screen that may or may not be part of the background. For instance, this tree, this whole section, I wanted to have painted. I wanted that to have a painted look, to look like it kind of integrated more with the background of the scene. But I also didn't want it to make it difficult for Ryan. So yeah, so if we look at that scene, let's go back to the other. Here is that same scene finished. So yeah, usually I have to look at like what has Ryan, or the animator, we should say, if we're working with everyone here. What does the animator put into the scene that is pretty much after it's been approved as an animatic and approved, we've approved it through roughs. We're saying go to final for your animation sequences. Then we know these characters are interacting with something in the scene, and that it would be difficult to move it or change its scale or something like that. So we try to figure those things out at the rough stage as much as possible. But that's something you have to figure out early on and then live with, because it would be much more difficult. For some reason we had to move these guys around and do something different. Then, as anyone who does background painting and layout knows, that's just a pain in the butt a lot of times. Because you've already painted it into the scene and you don't want to have to repaint it. But all these painting, yeah, I think I said at the top of the stream, we were going for the same look and feel from our video game, which is something we've inherited. The video game's look and feel we've inherited from kind of the golden to silver age of animation, which is like Looney Tunes, the older Looney Tunes cartoons, and Hanna-Barbera. I mean, you can see there's a lot of influence in both Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes here, as far as the old Yogi cartoons. And so the backgrounds are a little bit more evolved than you would see in a Hanna-Barbera. But so they maybe are a little bit more on par with what you might have seen in a Looney Tunes cartoon. But again, we wanted these to kind of reflect the video game that we're also making as a studio, and all of these characters. And as you could see from the animatic, some of the inherited animations come directly from the video game. And so as we get to these later scenes, let's just jump forward here. Ryan just stopped bothering with layout altogether, and we joked about that earlier on. But so we get here, there's just nothing, which is kind of fun because and Ryan could tell you those are the ones that I'm going to spend more time on, figuring out what I want to do with those in terms of the layout, because all I had to do was work with what was going on in the foreground. And we have these kinds of scenes here. But I think everyone has their own set of tools, right? Like Ryan said, he animates in Adobe Animate. I do almost all of my art now on the iPad in Procreate, using a Sketchboard Pro. So, eat your own dog food, which we like to do. But yeah, I mean, you can do this in any, and I mean, you can do it on a canvas with regular paints. All of the look and feel here is made to emulate gouache and other types of acrylics. And we use our own sets of brushes that we also offer through Sketchboard Pro. Um, but we use our own sets of brushes to build our games, and it just makes it kind of more streamlined to be able to pump out backgrounds a lot more quickly. You know, you don't want to draw the same types of leaves over and over again. So when I do that, I kind of try to make a variety of brushes for those, and making brushes to emulate the look and feel of, of real painted backgrounds from, the good cartoons we all grew up with. I will also say, to kind of cap off the whole look and feel, that's why we went back here, and I designed these title cards. And initially, I had the Business Bear was just static here, but I asked Ryan. I was like, Ryan, can you pump a little bit of life into this guy? And because I liked, when you see Bugs Bunny's title cards, he like chomps on a carrot or something, and so I thought that was pretty cool, and I wanted something like that. And Ryan came. I always joke about it, but he seriously came back within 10 minutes. He had it ready to go. Business Bear adjusting his tie, and I was like, perfect. Give me that. We slapped it together. Here I did a painted title card, which I I love title cards from animation. I have books just filled with just title card art from old cartoons. So this was a total joy to put together. We actually took some of our actual engineering graphics. I laid those in and then drew on top of them to make it look like these blueprints here underneath the sketchboard. And then the obvious joke again about the pizzas. And then we have an old-fashioned inspired credits card, and away we go. I will mention also with the music, we had to look for our own music that was available for the opening, and this is a piece of music from, I think, 1908 or 1910, and I think it's just called Grizzly Bear Ragtime, which is cool. So it kind of fits Business Bear's theme pretty well. But
I
yeah,
really
I
like
do.
I really
Oh,
like
go
this
ahead.
this title card right here, just because it kind of foreshadows what you're about to see. It's good. It shows
Mm,
the product as well, and it gives you a hint. You're like, wait, what's pizza got to do with this thing? So, I think you did a good job with this.
thanks. I wanted to open up for a few minutes, the last few minutes we have here for questions and answers. So if you've got some questions, throw them up in the chat. We did have one. Let's see. Ryan, we wanted to know, let's remove the cartoon. If we could look at the cartwheel, the guy that takes a cartwheel, if we could look at the keyframes used to animate
The,
the
the
guy, he does
wheelbarrow.
the flip. I'm pretty sure we're talking
Oh,
about the guy who takes who puts the legs on, because he does a flip through the scene.
oh, right. Okay, let me just grab that. Okay, I've got it up on my end. Yeah, right here. Okay, so we want keyframes. Pizza box. Let me just dial this down. Legs. Okay, so we're looking at the pig right here. I think that's what you
Hmm.
wanted. Okay, so keyframes. This is on ones. This is every single frame here. You probably want to see the frames. Shouldn't get rid of that. Let's do this. No. So I don't know what to tell you. it's just the pig. So what I've done is I've created all the art on one layer. As you can see, it's all a bunch of different symbols and groupings here, like that, and then just squash. And I've got the pig on one layer, and I've got his scarf. I just turned it off. It's on its own layer up here, and so I just did the pig first, and then I did the straight ahead animation with the scarf afterwards, like this. Okay, but I mean that's what the keyframes look like. Right here, it's held for 2 frames right there, just to have it be there a little bit longer, and then he goes off. But yeah, that's how I built it. All of the art on one layer of the pig. Top layer has got the scarf.
It's awesome. We had another question. Let's see. Ruel wants to know how we decided on each animal character's final design. That's a good question. That's actually a collaboration. My son, who works for the studio, his name is Venture. He started, I think, when he was like 15, working for us, and he designed all. He's our main character designer. He designed all these characters. So he designs the characters, and then we kind of look at what the setting is. I think I mentioned earlier that the game that these characters are designed for is set at the turn of the century, kind of like late 1800s, early 1900s. And so that's the kind of look and feel that we give to these guys. So if we look at this, it's certainly true when you look at the way the beavers dress and the way these guys, these little pig workers are dressed. So that's where that comes from.
We kind of inherited that from the game. Kind of said, this is already look and feel, and then we just grabbed them and put them in this cartoon.
Yeah. Alejandro wants to know, with using different programs from each other, how do we keep the art consistent? That's a really good question. Because I struggle, because I'm as the final person to have, I want things to look exactly the way I want them to look, and it is a lot of back and forth where we're sending out exports to make sure colors line up. The biggest thing is really the color, because what Ryan sees with his display and his application, the colors are going to look completely different a lot of times than what I'm seeing on, especially since I'm painting a lot of this stuff on the iPad, and it's using like the P3 color profile, which is really vibrant and really bright. And then when we export all this stuff out, and it's got like the YouTube or Vimeo profile on it, then a lot of times the color gets like muddied or washed down. That was the first comment that Ryan made, I think, when it came back to him. It was like, the color doesn't look as good as I was expecting. But yeah, it is a back and forth. Luckily, a lot of we are working on similar hardware. I think both of us are using Apple hardware, so there's not a lot of difference there. There shouldn't be a lot of difference there in color profiles and stuff, but sometimes there is. I think I had Ryan digging around for a while in Adobe Animate settings. I was like, can you tell me what your working color profile is in Animate? Because that's something that is totally prevalent in in Illustrator and Photoshop. And as anyone who uses Photoshop knows, you have different color profiles, and then you export it out and it shows up on a different, the web or something like that, and the colors will look totally different than you expected. Or when it goes to print, for sure, like it can be hard to tell what it's going to look like. But yeah, I had you digging around for color, and then we finally realized, like, I don't think there is a setting for color in Animate, so we just kind of did our best.
There probably is, but I don't think the user can get to it. I've been using the program for over 20 years, and yeah, I'm sure someone from Adobe's going, "Oh yes, there is. There's a way. I can tell you." But we got around it.
Those are good questions, guys. Thanks for sending those out. I did want to, before we wrap it up here, I wanted to take a moment just to remind ourselves too, because it's important, that we are sponsored. This panel is sponsored by Sketchboard Pro. If you're unfamiliar with the Sketchboard Pro, it's an iPad stand that was designed by us by accident while we were making our video game. And we made it so that it made working on an iPad even more comfortable. And it turns out there's hundreds of thousands of other iPad users out there who might agree that a solution like this was necessary. So it's it's really cool. It makes the drawing surface completely flat. Your iPad sets into it, and then you have a place to rest your arms, and you can use it on the couch or pop out the legs and use it on a table. We are running a special on Sketchboard Pro right now for Lightbox. If you use the code Lightbox21, you'll get 15% off and then free shipping in most areas that we ship to, mainly free shipping in the US and most of Europe and in the UK. Yeah. Oh, and we're also doing a giveaway. So if you would like to get a free Sketchboard Pro, which about $100 value. Um, we have a secret code. So the way this is going to work is the first person who uses this code to check out basically wins. So if you try to use the code I'm about to show and it doesn't work for you, then sorry, somebody else got it. But we are giving away one. So one person in North America will get one, and then we have a Europe shop too. So somebody, and that fulfills Europe and the rest of the world. So somebody internationally is going to get one, and somebody in the US is going to get one. All you got to do is go to sketchboardpro.com, add a Sketchboard Pro to your cart. This code will only work for a Sketchboard Pro, which is about $120 in the US and 129 euros on the Europe site. But use the code Gimme the Pizza, and you will get a Sketchboard Pro for free. Depending on where you live, you might have to pay a little bit more for shipping and possibly a little bit of tax, but for the most part, mostly free. But use that code, get a sketchboard, and it'll ship out pretty quickly.
I'm pretty sure everybody's
Cool.
already left and they're not listening to you at this point.
I know.
You can say anything you want at this point.
I want more people to get sketchboards because I feel like they help people feel more comfortable
awesome.
while you're making your artwork. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this presentation. I love working with you. I think I enjoy the team that we have quite a bit, and making this cartoon was so fulfilling because it was something cool we could do for Sketchboard Pro. I'm glad that people got to see that some little tips about how you animate. I'm always amazed. I love the movies you worked on before you came to us. Like I have so much Iron Giant stuff in the house. But yeah, let's show the cartoon one more time, and then we will call it a day for this panel. But thank you. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show.